and Craig Smoke. So who was the best athlete among you and your three brothers?
So I guess you've been talking to my youngest brother.
Yeah.
Yeah, you must have talked to Lee if you're asking. You're opening up with that kind of question. I'm sure you must have talked to Lee.
Well, he just wanted me to make sure we cleared the air on that, and then and that's it. I just, I thought we'd start with something other than virtual meetings and you can't practice or anything else.
Yeah, some sibling rivalry. That's what you're opening up with.
But he did tell me this, Larry. Again, he did. Lee, who of course now at 8M Consolidated, very successful, that you are his mentor. That the reason he got into coaching was because of you, because he was still in high school or whatever when all that went down. And how much does that mean that your brothers wanted to follow in your footsteps?
Well, we're there's four of us, and all four very competitive, and we all competed with each other, because we lived out in the country really, and so we competed with each other every single day. And so it does. I'm proud of what Lee's accomplished and the state championships he's won, and he's done a tremendous job everywhere he's been. And so I'm very proud of that. And it was interesting because he was the youngest, and we really didn't want to play with him because he was the baby, and so we pushed him out most of the time, and he found a way to kind of get his way in there, and he became a hell of an athlete.
You started your coaching career, and I know that was the time at Baylor, but you were at Garland High School. Was that under who was that under? Was that Joe Martin?
Yeah, so Scott Smith
right.
Was the first person to give me a job there. And when Scott left and went to SMU, Dennis Harris was the head coach after that, and I stayed there with Dennis until I went to Baylor.
Okay. And if your blood is in high school football in Texas as a player, or even if it's short-term as a coach before you got into college, is it always in Texas high school football, your blood?
Oh, you bet. There's nothing else like there, out there in the country like Texas high school football. Growing up and playing it and then coaching for it, 5 years in high school at the high school level. And then going on and moving across the country in college football and recruiting all the different states. I got to see, there's probably not a state in the country that I haven't recruited. And so there is nothing like the coaches and the players in Texas high school football.
Coach, when we talked to you back in February, one of the things I was really intrigued about the way that you are looking at installing this offense is that it's not about high tempo or low tempo. It's about kind of a yo-yo based on whatever the situation in the game needs. Do you think that's where offenses may be going now, that teams aren't going to be one or the other? They're going to be more adaptive and flexible to that moment?
Yeah, when we started this offense back in '99, that's what we were. We were multi-tempo, and eventually, we evolved to getting to where we were fast all the time, and then, so we've done it a lot of different ways. But I think, in my opinion, it's being able to do, to be multi-tempo, which creates more of a problem for the defense and the defensive coordinator. I think that's a little bit tougher than just going fast all the time. So I think it just depends on your philosophy and what you want to do as an offense.
Is what LSU accomplished, and obviously Dave Aranda was on the defensive side, and we know what they did offensively, and you have had an offense that has always been very productive and obviously put up huge numbers. Is there a fine line in what the offense can do compared to what you want to do defensively in this day and age of college football, Coach, where you have to be complementary in some way?
Well, you should always be complimentary. The teams that are very successful are usually complimentary. If you look at Baylor last year, Baylor had a great defense last year, an unbelievable defense last year, and the offense that they put on the field complemented the defense. So you just have to decide, what the strength is, and then make sure that you complement it with the other side.
Like you said earlier, Coach, you've recruited every state in the country. You're like Hank Snow or Johnny Cash. You've been everywhere. And how much does that kind of inform and help your offensive knowledge to grow to pick up something that maybe you wouldn't have seen had you only been in a couple places?
Well, when you've been coaching 34 years, you get to see a lot, So a lot of that has to do with longevity. So I've seen a lot. I've I've got to witness a lot of different style of offenses, a lot of different style of defenses, and what works against them. And, I think the key is just making sure whatever you do, you have a philosophy, and whatever you do within that philosophy, you have answers to whatever happens. And so, if you're going to run a base play and the defense is going to do this to stop it, well, you better have an answer on what you're going to do. And hopefully I'll have those answers.
So with what you see with Baylor, even though you haven't had hands-on, you've watched, I'm sure, more film than you have more time to do that than ever before, but coaches love to do that. What do you see with the weapons that you have back, and with what the offensive line can help you do as well with what Larry Fedora wants to do with the football?
Well, as of today, Dave, I have not watched any film on Baylor. And,
wow.
The only film I watched on Baylor was this past year as we were getting ready to play them. And that was watching their defense. And so I have not done that. And I purposely don't do that at any place I've ever been, because I want to start from scratch with those guys. And I want them to understand that they're all starting on the same page, every single one of them. So, I talk to them about they're building their resume every day. Whatever you want to be, you can be. You just start now. And so I don't really know what we have. I do. Obviously, I'm familiar with Charlie Brewer and what he's done in the past. And I'm really excited about the opportunity to work with him and the other quarterbacks in that room.
You've got a full room. A lot of times you walk into a situation you don't, where you may have one quarterback and you may have to rely on the transfer portal. How good is that for a staff, especially one in this situation, to enter into a group where you have some established players, especially at a position like quarterback?
Yeah, I think it's very critical. If you want to have success and have success early, you got to have, you got to be pretty solid in that room. And fortunately, with him and Gary Bohannon and Jacob Zeno and Garrett McGuire, Brandon Bass, those guys, we're going to be pretty solid in that room.
Larry, the fact you haven't watched film of them, is that also so you don't get any preconceived ideas or notions of a player?
Yeah, I mean, one, because it doesn't really matter to me what they've done in the past. It's all about what they do once I step foot on campus. It's them proving to me who they are, who they want to be as a player. And it's also, I want to prove to them who I am as a coach, and I want them to learn to trust me for who I showed them I am, not who I showed Chris Leak or Zach Robinson or Austin Davis. I want them to know, or, Mitch Trubisky, how I coached him may be totally different than I'm coaching these guys. And so I have to prove to them on a daily basis what I'm going to do to develop them.
Larry Fedora, offensive coordinator, Baylor, with us on Sicken 365 Radio.
I know that a lot's been made about all the different ways that you guys have had to communicate. Will this, in a strange way, almost bond you tighter as a staff and a program because you had to get creative and do all these different things?
Yeah, I hope so. You got to look for some kind of silver lining in this deal. I mean, I tell those guys every morning, I am sick and tired of looking at y'all in these little 2-inch squares, and I mean, really. And I know they're tired of listening to me and looking at me in those little squares. So, we're trying to be creative in the different ways we do it and what we do with our guys. And so, it's for me, it's, an old dog learning new tricks. I mean, if you'd have told me 10 years ago that I'd be doing online meetings, I'd have told you were crazy, But actually, I know how to run the computer now and run a Zoom meeting and share screens and share audio and do all the things that you got to be able to do, which I never thought I'd ever learn.
I have a Zoom meeting that I have to do with a committee on Thursday evening. Paul, by the way, I have a Zoom meeting on Thursday, and I'm petrified. I'll get into it at some. You mentioned teach an old dog new tricks. Football's been played forever, but there's always new wrinkles. You would think after all the great coaches in the years, hundreds of years of college football, that everything would be known. How is it there's always something new to find?
Well, it's because the game's always evolving. I mean, the game still is, blocking and tackling and running and, taking care of those kind of things. I mean, the fundamentals are still there. That hasn't changed from, we're in our 151st year, I believe.
Yep.
So that hasn't changed. But so as offenses and defenses evolve, everybody starts adding wrinkles in. And that's where the creativity comes from your offensive-minded people and your defensive-minded people, and that's what makes the game fun. It's not a cookie-cutter a league. I mean, everybody is willing to do things differently and try different things and add to their philosophies. And I think that's what's so exciting about college football is that you have so much difference from one team to another, and it just week after week, it's not everybody running the wishbone or everybody running a pro style or everybody running the air raid. I think you would get tired of that eventually. And so I think the wrinkles that everybody creates to try to take advantage of one side or the other is a lot of fun.
Larry Fedora with us on Sick and 365 Radio. Are you a numbers cruncher type guy that numbers of possession, what does that mean? How many snaps you take in a normal game in this league or in your offense from the goal line and how that relates to how many times you practice that during the week?
No doubt about it. I'm very much into analytics. I'm the numbers don't lie. Now you can make them tell you whatever you want, but I mean, they're not gonna lie. They're gonna tell you. And I mean, there are things within the analytics that tell you what you need to do to be successful. And over the years, I've discovered those things. And so those are the things that we spend time on.
Your dad is a barber?
That's correct.
How in the world, I bet his phone is blowing up right now of people who need to get their hair cut.
You know what? I mean, it was, so he's semi-retired. He cuts hair one day a week. He's 84 years old.
Wow.
And he is pretty amazing. I mean, so my brothers and I, we had to talk him, to quit cutting hair one day a week. I mean, he was like, what are my clients going to, I'm like, Dad, they can survive, let's make sure we're being healthy and protect yourself. So he did that, and he said, like, the only thing I miss right now is cutting hair.
Yeah.
I mean, he said, the rest of my day is basically what it was, but I miss cutting hair. And so he's the person I learned my work ethic from, and he's been just an unbelievable dad.
So you must, as a well-traveled coach, you must have a high standard for finding a barber in a new city.
You know what? I do, and that's been tough. Now I will tell you this. Lee, he probably didn't get into this, but there's only been one person that's ever cut his hair, and that's my dad. No one's ever cut his hair except my dad. So for me, as I moved around the country, that was impossible. This past year living in Austin, that was one of the highlights for me, was being able to drive over to College Station and get a haircut. So anytime I need a haircut, I drive to College Station, spend the night, and drive back.
What was it like for you to have all of what you've accomplished as a coach at various levels and at various opportunities and jobs and roles, to be an analyst where you're important because you have feedback, but you're not a part of the staff?
Yeah, well, that's a nice way of putting it, to say you're important. I don't know how important you are as an analyst, but it was a very rewarding experience for me, and I appreciate Tom giving me the opportunity to do that. For me, I wanted to go in and learn a new staff, learn a new way of doing things, see how another staff was doing things from the inside, and so that was very valuable for me. And at the same time, I was able to, I hope I was able to bring something to the table for Tom and the staff there at Texas.
Joe Wickline, who's your offensive line coach, is there a story about how you met him when you were leaving Baylor and he was on his way in?
There is a story. Yeah. So I was, that was my first college job, and I was pretty devastated that we were on our way out. And I was in my office, kind of just gathering some things up, making some phone calls. And, Joe walks down the hall and he sticks his head in. He's got his box of his stuff, and he says, hey, how long are you going to be in here? I'm kind of devastated, and that was the first time I'd ever met the guy. Hey, when you going to get out of here? But that's kind of the way our relationship's been ever since I met him.
Well, but you brought him back, so you guys must have made peace out of that, huh?
After that, he and I worked together for 10 years straight.
I know.
That was part of me coming back here, was making sure that Joe Wickline was here with me, because he and I believe the same things. We're kind of old school in our approach to a lot of things that we do, and but we understand the spread offense, and because we were, when we implemented the offense that we run today, there was only one other team in the country running a no-huddle offense back then. So it was a lot of fun as we developed this over a 10-year period.
Larry, just a couple of more questions. Thanks for your time. What is a higher or what is a deeper emotion, winning or losing?
Wow, that's a great question because I hate losing so much and it takes so much out of me. I don't know. That's one of the greatest things about this profession is it's the highest of highs and it's the lowest of lows. Mm-hmm. And I wish I could be one of those guys that says, that I brush it off and I move on very quickly. But the losses eat me up and they stay with me forever. And, I guess in that aspect, there are wins that I have forgotten, but there aren't very many losses that I've forgotten. So I guess that one probably, if that answers the question.
That seemed. We had R.C. Slocum on the show Tuesday, and he had a great record, as you know, at A&M, and like lost just 127 and 40 or whatever. But he knows the games that he lost, although there was some exhilaration as well. You do love to use the tight end. How important is that going to be for somebody to be a threat as a receiver in your offense?
Well, I really believe in being balanced. That's the thing. I want to be able to run the football no matter what, and I want to be able to throw it no matter what. And I believe if you can be balanced and do both, nobody should be able to stop you. So, and the tight end is a big part of that. I mean, I've always liked big bodied receivers, guys that create matchup problems for a defense. And if you got a guy that you can, you can move him out and detach him from the front and get him out in space, and he has to match up with a linebacker or maybe a smaller, a nickel or something like that, I think you have a mismatch problem. And so I've always liked taking advantage, and I've had some really good tight ends over the years.
Did you think David Wetzel was talented when he was a football player and you were a GA at Baylor?
I think maybe David was probably the most talented player I've ever seen in my career.
I threw some curveballs at you today.
Yeah, I'm assuming that David's sitting there with you.
No. No. We are social distancing, Larry. Yeah. We are. My last question.
But you've obviously talked with David.
I have done my due diligence. That's what we do. How much, honestly, can you explain, like you represent every coach in America right now, how much you miss being able to practice and play and the game itself? I know it's all about the health of this country and the people in the country. That's absolutely the number one priority. But how much do you miss that right now?
Yeah, I mean, you think about this. For 34 years as a coach, for 4 years as a college player, as 4 years a high school player, and 2 years in junior high in the state of Texas. I mean, I've been in spring ball. I mean, we've been practicing for all of that time. So I don't really know anything else. And it's not just the practicing. It's the day-to-day camaraderie with the players, and the other coaches, and that you miss so much. And, I get to see their faces on a screen, but it's not interacting with them. It's not pushing them beyond what they think they can go. It's really not helping them, to get beyond, plateaus and to help them reach their dreams and goals. That's what I miss. I miss that aspect of it, and that's the thing that's making me stir crazy.
Larry, thank you. Coach, we know you got so much to do. Appreciate your time. Thanks for your time, and we'll see you hopefully sometime soon.
Okay, sounds good, guys. Talk to you soon.
Larry Fedora, offensive coordinator at Baylor under Dave Aranda, and this is Sikkim 365 Radio. Your reaction to that on the Riverbend Liquor and Wine text line, on the Willis Law Firm chat room, and also on the text line is 254-339-1122. This is Sikkim.